Hi, I'm Quentz, and welcome to my review of Super Agent for the Playdate. Super Agent comes from Risolvi Productions. This is the same dev team that brought us P-Racing, a racing game that won a Playdate Community Award for Outstanding Technical Achievement, which you can see it deserved for its impressive 3D graphics. Now, Risolvi is poised to repeat that success by turning their 3D graphics capabilities over to a new genre, platforming. Let's check it out, it's Super Agent. Yes, Super Agent is a full-fledged 3D platformer. It features 15 main levels, all of which require you to run and jump your way to the exit. Along the way, each stage will put a number of obstacles in front of you, enemies, spikes, pits, etc. And there are also some goodies for you to collect, coins, stars, and hearts, which allow you to take an extra hit. Otherwise, if you run into any dangerous objects or you fall into a hole, it's an instant game over and you restart the level from the beginning. If you've ever seen or played a 3D platformer before, this all probably sounds pretty familiar to you. Right up front, I'm gonna say it, Super Agent is an extremely impressive game. I mean, look at it, aren't you impressed? If you're not impressed, I don't know what to tell you. Just like P-Racing, this game does things that I didn't really think were possible on the Playdate system. This is a fully 3D platformer that looks good and plays well. Now, obviously it's still abiding by the limitations of the hardware. It's in black and white, and it's not gonna feel as buttery smooth as a 3D game running on more high-powered platforms. But when you consider the size and the makeup of the thing that you're playing this on, Super Agent feels like a minor miracle. This just isn't the kind of game I really expected to show up on this handheld at any point, nor is it the kind of game you can find on the catalog shop. I'd venture to say that as of right now, this one is really one of a kind on this system. My early impressions of this game were mostly just me saying, wow, over and over again. But the question is, how does the game itself hold up once that novelty factor wears off? Or to put it another way, would Super Agent still be impressive or noteworthy if it were, say, a mobile game or a Steam game or a Switch game? Well, I can say one thing to start to answer that question. While Super Agent has a lot to show off in terms of graphical prowess, it's not breaking the mold when it comes to platforming gameplay tropes. Probably the closest analog to this would be Crash Bandicoot. It's in 3 dimensions, but you're running forward away from the camera, and you can move left and right to dodge obstacles or grab coins. All told, it's pretty bog standard stuff where platformers are concerned. Run, jump, dodge, don't fall, jump on turtles. I feel pretty safe saying that there's probably nothing here you haven't seen at least a couple of times before. That said, there are a few little twists thrown in that help break up the repetition. For instance, every so often, a target will pop up, and you will need to throw things at it to get past. You do so by pressing B and moving into an aim mode, and when you're in that mode, you can use the Playdate's crank to aim up and down. This is a small diversion from the platforming stuff, and it's fine, but I wouldn't say I found it that fun. It also doesn't quite feel a piece with the rest of the platforming stuff. It's not something you can break into at any point. There aren't many of these targets that you need to deal with. It's just a little intermission piece that does slow the action down. Then there are a few levels that break away from the formula of the rest. The game opens with a first-person helicopter flying level, and later on, you also get to go snowboarding down a mountain. Both the snowboard and the helicopter work pretty well. In fact, I thought the snowboard levels were kinda awesome, and it seems like this studio should be making a full-fledged snowboarding game for their next project. But kinda like the target shooting stuff, it does feel a little awkward having these levels sandwiched in between all the others when they don't really come back or integrate with the rest of the gameplay in a meaningful way. It feels like somebody had a tech demo for a helicopter game or a snowboarding game lying around, but they weren't sure how to work it into a full project, so they just decided to toss it into this one. They work perfectly well, but they don't really feel cohesive with the game as a whole. That's fine though, because they're relatively brief and the meat of the game is the platforming, and those platforming mechanics are solid. The Playdate's D-pad works surprisingly well for a 3D game. It helps that most of the time you are just running forward, but I was able to, run around in circles pretty smoothly without it feeling too strange. The levels may not be terribly innovative, but they're more than serviceable. If you like platforming, if you like jumping and dodging stuff, you'll have a good time with this. Sometimes I found the hitboxes a little unclear in places, like exactly when and where I would be hurt if I touched a spike or an enemy, or I sometimes had a little bit of trouble judging exactly how far I needed to jump to get to the other side of a pit or to avoid touching something that would kill me. And I think these are just the hurdles that come along with the Playdate's form factor, but I think for the most part the game is doing its best with what it has. The levels are very brief, so part of the challenge and enjoyment comes from playing through them a few times until you really learn the ins and outs of everything going on. Now, you can just beat a level and move on, but like any platformer worth its salt, Super Agent has bonus objectives to strive for. Each level will track whether or not you've collected all of its coins, and whether you found its secret star. The thing about these hidden collectibles is that the levels in Super Agent aren't super wide, so there aren't really that many places to hide things. Getting all the coins usually just means paying attention and jumping on all the enemies you can, and the star is generally just off to the side behind a tree or something. Much more interesting is that each level has a time trial challenge where you attempt to finish it under a certain time. And in a lot of games, that would of course just entail zipping to the end as quickly as possible, ignoring everything along the way. But here, every time you get a coin, it actually freezes the clock for a second. So it's about being efficient as you make your way through. I liked that. And there are online leaderboards if that's your thing. In terms of how much content you get, there are 15 standard platformer levels here in 3 different worlds, and each one of those worlds has its own theme. As you go, you'll get the different set dressing, some new enemies, more varied obstacles, and things will get progressively harder as you play. There's a big boss fight at the end, which is cool, but it's the only boss fight or anything like it in the entire game, and I would have really liked to see more of that kind of thing. If 15 plus levels isn't enough for you, there's also a new game plus mode that unlocks after you beat the game for the first time, in which all of the levels have been remixed with more challenging obstacles and faster enemies. This was really exciting for me to unlock. The new versions of the levels aren't anything too crazy, it's not like a total overhaul, but it's enough that they are genuinely harder and there are completely new elements at play in them, like boulders that roll towards you that otherwise you won't find in any of the standard gameplay. This is a really smart, efficient way to effectively double the amount of content in the game. In fact, if you're a platformer veteran, there's a good chance you might find the main game's content fairly easy, and once you unlock those remixed levels, it makes the rest of the game almost feel like a tutorial in comparison. I had a lot of fun with these, and they do feel like a really cool reward for getting through the main game. So if you're a Playdate owner, Super Agent is worth taking a look at, simply because there's no other game like it on this platform. It's a real technical showcase of what this system is capable of when someone is willing to push it to its limits. However, while the gameplay is more than functional, even fun quite often, it's not doing anything you haven't seen before. The reason to play this one, I think, really is primarily for the wow factor of having something like this on something like this. I wish that it didn't feel quite so disjointed. I wish there were some more justification for the helicopter, snowboard levels, the boss fight. If those were peppered in more frequently, or if they were explained somehow by the game's story, which is pretty much non-existent, that would have gone a long way towards making this feel like more of a complete package. At $12, this is on the higher end of pricing compared to most Playdate games. So I imagine that price will scare some people off until the game eventually probably goes on sale. But I don't begrudge them too much for the price. At the very least, Super Agent looks and feels like a premium title for the Playdate. The developers deserve praise for what they've accomplished here, and if you're a huge platformer fan, you'll enjoy the handful of hours you get out of this title. I certainly have my nitpicks, but like I said, it's just awesome to see a game like this up and running on here. And certainly, if I'm showing my Playdate off to people who've never seen one before, there's a good chance I might pop this one on just to see the looks on their faces when they go, oh wow, you can get something like this on something this small and this thin. And it works pretty well, it looks good. There's a strong foundation in place, even if I felt like there could have been some more cohesion to make it all come together. Super Agent is available on the Playdate catalog shop right now, and I am curious to hear from you if you've played this one or if you're considering picking it up. What are your opinions in the comments below? And are you going for those time trial high scores? Are you 100%ing this one? If you're a true gamer, well, you have to do that. Talk to me down there and like and subscribe for more stuff in the future. I'm Quince, and I'm getting out of here. Bye.